In 1976, the kitchen phone hung right on the wall next to the pantry. Its rotary dial was scratched from countless fingers spinning it. Whenever Grandma called, Mom would stand there in her apron, catching up on every detail of who had married whom or what casserole was in fashion. She'd snake the cord halfway across the tile floor until it reached the dining table. That cord was like an unofficial timeline of our family announcements. We kids spent plenty of time eyeing the phone, hoping the next call would be ours for once. Maybe the neighbor asking to borrow sugar, or a friend calling to invite us over. But calls weren't fast back then. Mom would be perched on the seat, laughing at Grandpa's fishing stories, or Dad would pace while asking about the factory's overtime hours and mortgage refinancing. Once, after school, I sat cross-legged near the pantry and waited for what felt like forever until it was finally my turn. My friend Julie had promised to call about roller skating plans. When I finally got my hands on the receiver and heard her, my heart leapt at the chance to make our weekend plans. We didn't mind the waiting, though. Mom's laugh carried through the house like music, and Dad's pacing shoes echoed in a rhythm we somehow got used to. It gave us kids time to doodle in spiral notebooks or sneak bites from the cookie jar while the phone was still busy. It was a family ritual, really, passing time together around a single object that held everyone's shared lives. That kitchen phone heard every story, every laugh, a small reminder that waiting often leads to wonderful connections. Birthdays in our house were always simple. A homemade cake with candles, cards signed with loops from siblings, and gifts wrapped in grocery bag paper. But the big highlight was Grandma's call. That year, 1973, I waited nervously near the avocado green phone on the kitchen wall. Grandma lived 6 states away, and long-distance calls felt like gold back then. Precious moments, carved out of distance. Mom had told me not to hover next to the receiver, but I couldn't help myself. With one ear trained to hear the ringing and the other tuning out my brother's teasing, I stayed put. When it finally rang, I practically lunged for it. But Mom, like always, scooped it up, her smile warm as she greeted Grandma's familiar voice. Mom handed me the phone after a few minutes, and I didn't even say much. Grandma's voice, lovely and accented from her younger years in Pennsylvania, filled the receiver. She asked me if the cake was yellow like I liked, and I told her it was, even had sprinkles. She said she'd send a package soon, but not to open it without Mom nearby. Something secret just for me. I grinned and promised. I think back on how big that call felt. Bigger than the cake, the presents, even the day itself. When long-distance minutes ticked by so slowly, a simple call from Grandma was a treasure better than any gift. The call wasn't just a birthday wish. It was how Grandma found her way into our simple celebrations from far away. Home in 1978 was bustling with chatter, especially around the big kitchen phone. It hung neatly on the wall, its bright orange cord coiled up like a cat's tail. But the house was also loud with sibling quarrels, TV static, and a dog that barked at just about anything. No wonder my older brother Mark always took the phone to the quietest corner he could find. The cord would stretch long enough for him to sit on the stairs and twirl his finger around it, talking to his best friends. Mark used to hum into the receiver when waiting for his friend Pete to pick up. Sometimes he'd sing something ridiculous, like made-up lyrics about school lunches. Pete would laugh and almost choke on the other end. We didn't have speakerphone, but you could always tell when Pete was laughing. Mark would burst out laughing seconds later. Anytime someone tried to grab the phone mid-call, Mark would twist his body like a human lock, shielding the receiver with a big grin and shouting, "It's my turn." Dad always told us to leave Mark alone if he was chatting. "Those boys need to talk, just like you do," he'd say to the rest of us. It didn't matter how goofy they got. Pete and Mark's calls were sacred. Sometimes I think of how much ground that orange cord covered, winding its way across the kitchen, past the barking dog or noisy TV, into quiet corners where friendships could truly grow. That cord wasn't just stretched physically. It carried long moments of joy, trust, and laughter between two friends. In 1975, the big family dinners started promptly at 6. Dad carved the roast, Mom passed around the rolls, and someone always commented about the noise from the TV in the background. But sure enough, just as everyone's forks were poised above the plates, the phone would ring, interrupting dinner time like clockwork. No one dared answer immediately, but waited those first few rings like an unspoken agreement. Ring 3 or 4? Mom finally stood. The corded phone was mounted right between the living room archway and the china cabinet, its beige coloring nearly invisible against the wooden paneling. Mom gave a cheery hello. Most nights, the caller was Aunt Clara. She'd always start fast. "Guess what John did at church last Sunday?" The stories were worth the interruption, enough so Dad would tilt back in his chair to listen. One rare night, Aunt Clara called about a free-range chicken she couldn't catch in her yard. It devolved into a family lesson about how smart chickens could be, almost frightening. Clara's voice ripe with frustration, while Dad acted as though he were a rural chicken consultant with outlandish advice. It sounds silly now, how disruptive that dinner phone became. But in truth, the calls between roast slices and mashed potato servings gave us room. Room to smile, joke, and hear someone 3 streets away as if they were right next to us. Reminders of how warm a shared laugh could become. Interruptions weren't interruptions at all. They were little connections wrapped in humor and casual family joy. By the time 1979 rolled around, I thought I had perfected sneaking phone calls. A big green phone hung on the wall in the hallway, right between the laundry room and the bathroom. An inconvenient spot for secrecy, but ideal for family convenience. After teeth brushing, I would eye the cord carefully, keeping track of which sibling had their turn already that night. Mom said as long as the homework was done, we could chat for 5 minutes each, though realistically, 5 minutes stretched only as far as the leniency of our laughter. I had a habit of twirling the cord while whispering into the receiver, timing my chat between passing footsteps of older siblings or Dad coming to check the locks. Calls with my best friend Terry always felt like secret missions. We'd plan future movie nights or exchange jokes we overheard at school, keeping a mental tally until we could burst out laughing at the good ones. Sometimes the warm hallway glow, mixed with the hum of distant TV static, gave those chats a specific coziness I still can't find elsewhere. Even if I heard Dad clear his throat from further away as a subtle signal, I felt we stole rare adventures in those 5-minute windows. Late-night calls had a quiet honesty, threading whispers between moments when we felt tucked inside the world together.